forward to our next speaker, Dr. Elizabeth Evans, retired doctor, medical advisor to SSITA, Safe Schools Information Technology Alliance, co-founder of Stop Smart Meters, member of Erica Mallory Blythe's PHIRE, that's PHIRE, Physicians' Health Initiative on Radiation and the Environment, and Dr. Evans treats EHS with NAET, and I'm sure we'll find out what that is. Loves to sing, especially karaoke. If she had her time again, she would be a pop star, and I think we can probably guess that's true. She relaxes by watching stand-up comedy. It's quite rare that it's funny nowadays, isn't it? But yeah. Business achievements she's most proud of, giving evidence on the health risks from wireless radiation to the Common Select Committee overseeing the smart meter rollout against Dr. Jill Meara, Head of Public Health England. Okay, Dr. Evans is going to talk about the implications of wireless in schools and guidance for concerned parents, and perhaps grandparents too. Top three messages. Number one, getting schools to become wired internet access only and mobile phone free would have a major positive public health impact on our children. Second point, educating yourselves and your children about how wireless technology works and the health risks associated with those technologies will enable them to take measures to reduce their exposure and to treat wireless devices with caution. And finally, other countries have already begun to legislate to protect their children from wireless health risks. We must not wait for the UK government to protect our children. We must do it ourselves and share this information with other parents, schools, and even MPs. Dr. Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. I've just got my music stand in case I break into song. So just like to say thank you very much for turning up. It's lovely to see so many people here today. And I hope you'll agree that Dr. Mallory Blythe has presented compelling and weighty evidence of harm from wireless radiation. And that if this is correct, this will have profound implications for our children who may be exposed 24 hours a day for a significant proportion of this time being in school. Victor's told you all about me. I would just like to say at the beginning, I'm not anti-technology. I think the computers and the internet are an amazing resource, but we just need to look at how we can use this technology safely and to minimize the health risks to all. So I wonder how these pictures make you feel. Do you feel very excited at the technological progress our children are experiencing? Or do you feel a sense of unease with these children with their mobile phones clamped to their heads? And before we go on, I just want to ask, how many of you have children in a Wi-Fi school or grandchildren? Okay. And how many of you don't know whether your schools of your children are Wi-Fi'd? And I wonder how many people have children with mobile phones? Okay. So this is an issue that's going to be, if not affecting us all now, it will be of issue at some point in our lives. And it won't have escaped your notice that over the last 5 years or so in particular, there's been a widespread adoption of wireless technology in schools. This has often been pushed by industry, who are offering iPads or tablets at reduced rates, and they promote this with propaganda that claims that these devices will improve educational standards and results. However, the studies that they cite are generally funded by industry and may be widely refuted by independent experts. And I'm sure that Paula Healy will be covering this later in her talk on screens. I can't see what that one is. So there was a report that was just released in September this year by the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, which show that there are huge numbers now of computers and other wireless devices in schools. Interestingly, their conclusion was that investing heavily in school computers and classroom technology does not improve pupil performance. Schools were previously already hardwired, many schools, for multiple computer connectivity, but unfortunately, due to the adoption of tablets and the trend for the use of mobile devices, many schools have now also installed Wi-Fi throughout their buildings. They may put routers in classrooms, corridors, into common rooms. Some schools, boarding schools, are putting them into dormitories and into libraries. And I've even seen in a local private school a router in a dance studio. These routers, it's very important to remember that these are industrial strength routers. They're far more powerful and polluting than your average domestic router. So there are several sources of wireless radiation in a classroom. You may have one or more Wi-Fi routers. There will be laptops, tablets, or desktop computers. There may be mobile phones and smartphones, iPod touches, and interactive whiteboards. And we need to remember that all wireless devices emit radio frequency microwave radiation, usually 24 hours a day while they're switched on, whether they're actively being used or not, so even when they're on standby. These levels will obviously increase when they're actively transmitting data, but the only way that you can eliminate the emissions is to turn them off or to put them onto flight mode. Oh gosh, it's very slow this. So many classrooms will have, say, 20 to 30 children. Each may have a wireless laptop or tablet. They might have a smartphone or an iPod on standby in their bags. There may be a Wi-Fi router on the ceiling, and the teacher may also have some devices. So this diagram gives you an idea of how levels of the invisible electrosmog, as it is known, can become quite high in this environment as all of the devices' radiation starts to interact, and that the cumulative levels of radio frequency that children and their teacher will be exposed to all day, every day at school, for many years of their life will be very significant. However, if you were to turn all those devices off, on the flip side, given the amount of time that children spend in school, if you were to make schools free of radio frequency radiation by hardwiring all internet access and making children turn off their phones during the days, you could actually give children a significant reduction and respite from radiation exposure, even if they're exposed at home. So there is a huge potential here, if there's any teachers here, for schools to have a major positive impact on children's health just by adopting this one policy. So I'd just like to discuss a principle called the precautionary principle, which is a very important one. It's defined here in the TUC's Occupational Cancer, a Workplace Guide. It states, if there is a reasonable possibility that a substance may cause harm, then there should be a presumption that it will, and therefore exposure to the substance should be minimized. Now, I would argue that following Erica's talk, she has shown that the evidence is already available in more than enough levels to satisfy this precautionary principle with respect to wireless radiation. This is particularly important in schools for the following reasons. Children are more vulnerable to radio frequency radiation. Their nervous system is developing, and we've heard about the effects that electromagnetics have on nervous development, and they also have greater tissue penetration. They will also have long hours of exposure over many years, and there is currently no research at all showing that long-term exposure to low-intensity microwave radiation is safe for children. As Erica mentioned, radiofrequency is already classified as a 2B carcinogen, with many scientists wanting to upgrade that to a 2A or 1 classification. And the TUC Workplace Guide says that caution should also be used to prevent exposure to substance in 2B in the workplace. Children, of course, are not consenting to this exposure. Many of their parents will be unaware that their children are being exposed. And to reiterate what Erica said, it is unrealistic to wait until there's 100% proof of harm. Science rarely provides this for environmental exposures, and to get close to that may take decades. So, to summarize some of the effects that Erica was talking about in her presentation, broadly speaking, there are two categories of effects from wireless exposure. The first category is the acute symptoms, which arise from immediate or short-term exposure. These may be symptoms that you have heard children or teachers reporting, in the last few years from school or in their homes. And are symptoms basically of electrohypersensitivity. Now, statistics show that probably around 30% of the population have mild electrohypersensitivity. So in a class of 30 children, you may be expecting 9 or 10 children to have some symptoms which are directly due to the Wi-Fi and wireless radiation in their classroom. Around 3% of the population are believed to have a more severe levels of hypersensitivity symptoms. So that may be 1 or 2 children in a class. So symptoms they might be reporting are headaches, insomnia and sleep problems, nosebleeds, palpitations, fits and seizures, problems with their memory and behaviour, reduced concentration, anxiety and depression. And then for all children, whether they are sensitive or not, their chronic long-term exposure will increase their risk of cancer, of infertility, dementia, possibly autism, and then birth defects in their own children. And if you follow the press, you will be already aware that we are seeing rising levels of dementia, brain tumours and other cancers, infertility and autism, as well as allergies and sleep disorders. And these are all rising worldwide in line with the proliferation of wireless technology. And we saw that in Erica's graph. Many have reached epidemic levels, and these may be some of the headlines you will have seen recently. So the first one is a headline just from about a month ago. Alzheimer's Research UK produced a report which predicted that now 1 in 3 of our children will suffer dementia. It mentions a possible cause as increasing life expectancy, but we're also seeing a massive rise in early onset dementia, so that is not the only cause. Then this was from earlier in the year, a prediction from Cancer Research UK that half of people will now get cancer in their lifetime. Again, although they like to think it might be that we have a longer life expectancy, the statistics show that we're seeing raised rates of early onset cancers. And this is a frequent headline talking about an infertility time bomb. I think at the moment it's around 1 in 6 couples suffering from infertility, and there's a prediction that this will rise to 1 in 3 couples. So I work as the medical advisor to SSITA. We work with children and parents who are affected by Wi-Fi in schools. And we're already aware of many children and teachers who've been made ill by this technology. And this is often to a point where they can no longer continue their education or their career in a Wi-Fi school. And some children are having to be homeschooled because they can't find any Wi-Fi free options locally. And I just thought it'd be useful to take a few minutes to share a couple of examples with you. So we've recently heard of a girl called Child A. She's a 6th former in a boarding school. Now, this boarding school decided over the summer holidays to put some routers into the dormitories, and there was one put into her bedroom. And they also decided to leave the Wi-Fi on 24 hours a day in school, just in case the children wanted to access the internet at 3 in the morning. This term, very sadly, she developed very quickly anxiety, fatigue, terrible, terrible problems sleeping, headaches, palpitations, and even episodes of complete disorientation. But when she went home, where they don't have Wi-Fi, she was fine, the symptoms would disappear. This is a real problem for her. She is now facing the possibility of moving schools 2 terms before her A-level exams because the school is refusing to provide a Wi-Fi free bedroom for her. Then we have another girl, Child B. She's a 6th former who developed severe electrohypersensitivity after her school installed Wi-Fi. She's now facing problems finding a university to go to which has no Wi-Fi in the bedrooms. And I'd just like to tell you a little bit more about her, because I think it's useful to that this becomes a real problem. This is not just a statistic, this is somebody's life that is being really wrecked by this technology. Child B, she's a very accomplished girl. She achieved 11 A stars at GCSE, 3 A stars and 1 A at A level. She's a talented actor. She's a county netball player and plays other sports to a very high level. She plays 3 instruments post-grade 8, 2 with distinction. And she's a dynamic and happy young lady with a zest for life. Then her school installed strong Wi-Fi during the Easter holidays just before her AS level exams. Once they realised, they asked the school to turn it off during her exams, but unfortunately during her maths exam they didn't do this. And she lost 25% of marks, which for her was unprecedented. She's also experienced bullying and mocking from staff at school. And I'd just like to read you some of her own words. When around particularly strong Wi-Fi routers and mobile phone masts, I firstly experience very powerful piercing headaches around my eyes. Secondly, I get extremely hot and bothered, as if I'm literally in a microwave. They can affect my vision. The difficulty when working, although I don't always experience these headaches and dizziness, is that I find it very difficult to concentrate and feel panicked because of the confusion. This occurred in 3 of my exams this year. Because we had been told that Wi-Fi was removed and I was in a clear zone, I was not immediately aware of the problem, only that I couldn't seem to get my head around the questions. I was very hot. The pressure in my head was very strong. For someone who has never had a problem with an exam, I found this most disconcerting and worrying. I have worked extremely hard this year. Clearly there was an external problem. These symptoms are not constant, and I'm very happy and healthy for the majority of my time, particularly at home, where we are secluded, but it is becoming a real inconvenience when entering urban areas. At 17, I am at an age where social media and communications are of almost crucial importance. I am the only child I know of at my school who does not have an iPhone or WhatsApp or have my emails pinging into my phone, meaning I am always behind in hearing information and am removed from the gossip of my immediate friends. If they had no medical side effects for me, I would jump at having an iPhone. If this did not seriously affect me, why would I make it up? And then just to bring home the fact that it's not just children who are suffering, these are the words of a teacher whose career was destroyed by Wi-Fi in school. I was a fit and healthy teacher at a well-respected independent school. However, about 5 years ago, I gradually became increasingly racked and disabled by medical symptoms that I had never previously experienced. It started with dull head pain, usually on the right side, intense pain through my eyeballs, chest pain and palpitations, burning skin, neck, muscle and joint pain, tingling sensation on the skin over most of my body, lapses in concentration and an inability to think properly or speak coherently, sometimes so bad I had to leave my class with a pupil in charge, sleep problems and visual disturbance, sometimes so bad that I couldn't see the pupils in front of me in my classroom. As you may imagine, all of this led to intense anxiety as to what on earth was happening to me. Meanwhile, the IT technician at school heard I was suffering from head pain and dizziness. He told me that he had read an article linking these symptoms to Wi-Fi. I didn't know what Wi-Fi was. It was then that he informed me that the school had installed a powerful Wi-Fi system about 12 months before, exactly the time my symptoms started. It turned out I had been sitting near to Wi-Fi routers in the staff room, the workroom, and the classrooms for over 12 months. I have since been diagnosed with malignant melanomas on the side of my body which was nearest to the Wi-Fi routers at school, on areas that had not been exposed to the sun. During my time at this school, several of my pupils appeared to be suffering from similar symptoms, requiring time off school during their A-level studies. 2 pupils in particular became extremely anxious and withdrawn, becoming forgetful and unable to concentrate. And I've recently become aware of a child attending the same school who has presented with similar symptoms. She was diagnosed with epilepsy, as this was the closest diagnosis that her doctors could make. So I think that you'll agree those are powerful words from people who've actually been experiencing this. And so in light of the acute symptoms and also the chronic risk to health, we need to be asking ourselves, do we really want to be exposing our children 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for years and years of their lives to this invisible toxin? Will Wi-Fi actually improve our children's education? Well, not if the following points below are true. It causes impaired memory and concentration, adverse effects on behaviour, numerous recurrent physical symptoms, and in the long term may reduce fertility and lifespan. And as Erica showed you earlier, there are many, many organisations already who are calling for a precautionary approach or ban on Wi-Fi in schools. And I won't cover them all, but they're from America, Austria, Russia, Europe, the Bio-Initiative report, which in 2012 said there was already enough evidence for schools to only use hardwired systems. Interestingly, in 2013, the French National Assembly voted to recommend wired network in schools to, quote, protect children from harm from microwaves. And the Israeli government health minister in 2013 published guidelines to restrict Wi-Fi in schools. And he said, "We will cry tears for the irreversible damage we have caused our children in the future." So there's a lot of awareness going on. And this year, there's been an international EMF scientist appeal calling for the WHO to draw up protective guidelines on EMFs, particularly for children and fetuses. And 3 countries have taken this further. France this year banned Wi-Fi in nurseries and daycare and restricts hours of use in primary schools, and routers are only allowed to be on when they're actively being used for education. Israel have done similar. They've passed legislation this year, as have South Tyrol in Italy. So you may ask, why are things different in the